Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Gritters. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. This episode of the Grandpa Channel is brought to you by Hires Big H, home of wonderful hamburgers, French fries, onion rings, the magical and medicinal, so I say, root beer freeze. Head to Hires and treat yourself like the legend that you are. Now back to the channel. Hello, and welcome to the Grandpa Channel. We have a terrific guest scheduled here this afternoon. A friend of mine for, golly, I bet it's over 20, 25 years. Jack Peck, who kept my son from reform schools and juvenile halls and probably a life of crime. He was my son will hotly dispute this, by the way, but was my son's football coach. And Jack is a great football coach, but even better, he is a builder of young men and viewed football as one of the very best ways to build character. And I am honored to have Jack here with me. And Jack, kind of give us a little bit of your bona fides for how many kids, how many grandkids, what's the age range of your...
Okay, I have 5 kids. I had 4 boys in a row. My wife then told me that I would have to play center on the basketball team because she was going to have a 5th child. So when she got pregnant, she said, it's just going to be another boy. And you'll finally have your son. Well, as it turned out, that was my lovely daughter and a real gift.
How many grandkids? Yeah.
I have 17 of my own and 3 that came adopted to us. So I've got 20 total.
That's a good output, I think. Now in today's world, that's not bad at all.
No, it isn't. It's really a great group, very active group. We got football players and basketball players, and we have cheerleaders. It's hard to get that group together because of the number of activities. Most of them are here in the Salt Lake Valley, but we do have our daughter, dang it, that lives up in Blackfoot, Idaho. The one that we really wanted to keep here. We had to let her marry a vet.
They won't be. Your sons won't be watching this, so it's okay.
Well, that's good. She's sweet and she's beautiful, and she's raising a great family of volleyball players.
Boys and girls?
Sorry. 2 oldest daughters are playing college volleyball. And then she's got a son, Truman, that is a budding basketball and baseball player. And then my little Tweety bird, she's the light of our life and theirs. And her name is Aggie. They named her Aggie because they both went to Utah State. And then her husband finished up his doctorate degree at Washington State University, and they're Aggies as well. So one of the funnier things that happened with her was the first time that they took her to Logan, she saw Home of the Aggies. And everywhere she looked, there was Aggies. And she says to her mom, I think I'm famous here in Logan.
That's what she said. How old is she?
Because of her, she's 8 years old, and just
it's some of the kids just have this personality that you just kind of go, where did they get this? They're constantly making me laugh and all that sort of thing.
She doesn't. She's nobody's fool. That girl is like, she is on top of everything, and nothing escapes her notice.
Now, tell me about your grandfather. You said that neither one of them you knew, or that he died when you were young. Is that
my grandpa Owen, who was on my mother's side? I got to know him. He died of emphysema. He was a guy who smoked quite a bit and light cigars. Unfortunately,
he got caught up for that. Yeah.
My other grandfather died in an accident. He actually was a caretaker for the first chicken farm that the church purchased and produced chickens and eggs out of. And he fell backwards off of a tractor that he was working on and died. Died that way. Yeah.
Did you feel like you were missing something growing up at all with not really having your grandfathers there, or didn't do much thinking about it?
No, I don't think so. I did miss my grandpa Owen on my mom's side. We didn't see them very much. They lived in California, and the times that we did see them, they would come on the train. We thought that was such a great thing to be able to go down to the old Union Pacific Depot, and the train would come in, and my grandparents would be on that. Mm-hmm. I remember one time that we did go down to California, all of us piled on board the train, and that was just a great trip. I remember my grandpa Owen from that. Wasn't old enough to be old grandpa then.
I've never heard my grandfather's voice, but one died when he was 48, and then the other one died when he was like in his late 50s. So I've outlived him. Isn't that great? But I think now, with people living longer, tell us about your dad and tell what kind of a grandfather.
My father lived to be 96 years old. My mother lived to be 95 years old. I'm pretty impressed with my genes.
Yeah,
and I'm not to live quite a long time if I can overcome some of the other stuff this life hands out to you. But my father was a very hard worker. He was an extremely loyal worker to the people that he worked with. Mm-hmm. And my mother, when my grandma Owen passed away, her mother passed away, she inherited their home down in Leisure World. Of course, we never called it Leisure World. We always called it Seizure World.
I don't think I want to live at Seizure. No,
Seizure World. But it was close to Seal Beach. It was walking distance of the beach. And it was a great place for them to live. They lived there about 20 years.
Yeah.
When they got to the point that they were being hospitalized for this and that and the other, I talked them into coming up to the city, back to Salt Lake, so that we could keep an eye on them. Mm-hmm. And so they moved back here for about 16 years before they passed away. And they got to know my kids. That's one thing that really they missed as grandparents, where they missed socializing with the family. All of our family lived here. They were living in California.
Were they ever tempted to move up, or was it only?
They would come up during the summers sometimes, and they would live with my brother up in Camas. Mm-hmm. So that was a good situation for them, and they got to know my brother's children well, but they didn't get to know my.
What were they like? What was he like as a grandpa to your kids?
He was a kidder. He was one of the great kidders of all time, and he would tease the grandkids. All of my kids remember their grandpa as being a guy that was funny. He was a funny guy with them, and he would kid with them, and he'd tease them. Sometimes unmercifully, he'd tease it to the point of tears. We'd have to explain to them it was sometimes well. You just have to excuse his teasing. But they got to the point where they'd give it back to him as hard as
like
him. A great time when you went to visit Grandpa. They all wanted to go and see Grandpa.
What did you learn from him in your grandparent? Is there anything? It could be a bad example or good example.
I would have to say that the example I got was good one. My father was a strong member of the church and took it seriously. He was a person who excelled in integrity. He was a man that you would never question his integrity. You knew that if Jack Peck told you that that's the way it was, that was the way it was. And I think that has carried over into my own parenting, in that I've tried to teach my children the importance of integrity, the importance of first impressions being lasting impressions, and the importance of knowing who you are and being able to explain to others who you are and what you stand for, and just having the same kind of unquestioned integrity in everything that they did. So that was one thing I definitely have tried to teach my kids. And my kids have seen the hard work and the effort that I've put in. And they also know that the church means a lot to me, that my priesthood means a lot to me, the fact that I hold it. As a football coach, I never felt that I was coaching football. I always thought that I was building young men.
I would second that and third that and that's why I loved having Winnie play with you. And you'd get after him because sometimes he needed to be gotten after. But I always knew that it came from love and that you were taking the long view with the boys that you were coaching. And as a dad, how can you not love that?
Well, there were times that I would really blister them as a coach, but I was also very fair. When they did things right, I would be overly effusive with congratulations and praise and love and hugging them and telling them how great they were and how wonderful it was. It was fun to watch the lights come on, and all of a sudden you went from having that football player to having a person with integrity, the person that knew that they could accomplish great things, whether it was on the football field or whether it was in life. Those were the things that were important to me, was how a young man felt about himself and his teammates when he walked off the field. And he knew that he had given the best that he could give, that his performance was always acceptable, and that acknowledged that he had done his best. That was extremely important to me. It's been satisfying to me to have many of these young men who played for me, who have sought me out, have looked me up, have come to my home, have seen me, have been there sitting. And one of them, big old tackle that I had, he was fierce on the field, but he was a teddy bear inside. And he said, "Coach, one thing that I always remembered about you was you never took the Lord's name in vain." And he said, "I appreciated that." And that is something that I've tried to live by and something that I've adopted. But it was interesting that he brought that up and that he noticed in my coaching style, although once in a while I would let some every words, purgatory derivative. There'd be I'd probably let that slip, but never do the Lord's name in vain. At games and in practices that I watched, I never thought he went over the other side. I always was, even if it was Winston, it's getting blistered. Oh, yeah. This would applaud that. It was important to me that they knew that they were successful. It was important to me that they knew that they were successful not just on the field, but I was grooming them for life. I was grooming them for meeting the hard and the difficult things that they might encounter in their lifetime, and trying to make sure that I instilled in them the will to win, the will to overcome those things, the will to fit into tough situations and be able to overcome personal weaknesses that they may have. I thought that it was very, very important that young men that I developed a great relationship with and came to me, and he admitted that he had smoked some marijuana. He wanted me to know about it. And he said, "I guess what I really need is somebody to make me feel that I'm still important." Really? So let's twist this a little bit. Coaching skills come from just coaching, or did it come from being a parent of these 4 boys and 1 girl? And then how do you use your football coach talents, or is it just grandpa talents? How do you deal with are you easier on them than you were some of your players? Having grandchildren is the reason that you don't kill your children, because those grandchildren are just the light of your life, and they're so wonderful. But I would say that it is all encompassing. Now, my grandkids will tell you that one of my pet peeves is when they leave wrappers cooked or they leave empty bottles out and they don't make it into the trash bin. And my wife always says, "Well, you were raised by June Cleaver," and it's true. Was your mom a really good housekeeper? My mom was an immaculate keeper, and she passed that on to me. Because there's nothing that gets under my skin more than looking and finding trash. Poor grandkids, they have to pay the price for what I learned from my mother. So does your voice have to raise a little bit? Oh, yeah. They're constantly being reminded that they got to measure up to that. So if you ask them, what do you remember about your grandpa that sticks with you, they'd probably say, "Whose trash is this?"
That's not a bad thing. What? You're teaching personal responsibility.
I think that is a personal trait that you ought to develop. I'm afraid that that's one thing that they'll remember, something of that nature.
Tell me how you share your faith, which is so important to you. How do you do it consciously, or how do you share it with grandkids? Because I've noticed with my grandkids and with my kids that sometimes when I come on a little too strong, which I never do, of course, they just go click, and yeah, they tune me out. I get disrespected, as professional athletes would say these days.
I think so, and I've had those occasions and things where I've tried to remind them that they're not quite measuring up to what not only their heavenly Father would like, but what their dad expects of them. But the ways that I've seen my faith shared, family prayer was always an important thing to us. Not that we were perfect at by any means, but that was important to get the family together, kneel in prayer, and be able to express each one of our individual, express to Heavenly Father how they felt. I think another thing that my kids constantly saw was me reading the scriptures. They will remember that Grandpa had the scriptures out, and that I would read from the scriptures. We kept a rhyming Bible that had stories of Jonah and the whale and Daniel and the lion's den and some of those things. And we kept in our bookcase glass ornaments that were like a lion and a whale. And we would relate those stories to those kids. And the kids, they grew up learning those things and hearing them. And us reading out of the rhyming Bible, these little stories that they became very familiar with. So I would think that if I could define how my style was as a grandpa was, it was by example and by request on their part as well as mine that we stop and that we read some of those things and that we develop interest in things that are sacred, things that are important more than just life itself, something that identifies deity and the importance of deity in their life.
What if you had to name 2 or 3 things, or 5 or 10 or 20, that are your strengths as a grandpa? I know this goes, you're not a boastful, beating your chest sort of a person, but what do you think your strengths as a grandpa are?
If I had to really pinpoint a strength, it was that Grandpa always showed up.
Okay.
No matter if they were 100 miles away or 200 or 300 miles away, Grandpa always was there. I always showed up. I thought that it was important that my kids knew that they were important enough and played a big enough part in my life that I could take the time to be there, to support them, to reach out to them, to let them know that they were loved and cared about. And it didn't matter what sport it was, didn't matter how far away it was. My wife would get on board a plane if we needed to, and we would fly back to New York. We went back to Cooperstown, and
Did they play some games?
did a wonderful tour back there, and went to the Hall of Fame and all of those things with those kids. I think that one of the most important things that a grandparent could do for their grandchildren is to show up, is to just flat be there. And I think that that means more to my grandchildren. They will always remember that Grandpa was there. He was always there. Some of the other traits.
Are you a kidder like was it your grandfather?
The worst. Absolutely.
Would you needle with a little bit, or?
I pull pacifiers out of mouths. I pull bottles away from little children.
That's
how and tease them. I toss them up in the air and search them. I would say that I am probably the next generation of great teasers in our family, and my kids. I can't even read a story straight.
Yeah.
If I read the Green Eggs and Ham, it's always blue eggs and pork sausage. It's always something
Very
different.
a theme.
And when the kids understand the story and you've read through them a few times, they always say, "That's not what it says, Grandpa." I would say, "Yeah, that's what." Oh well, okay, okay, I gotta change that, and I would go back and read the way it should be. But in the next paragraph, I'd be changing it again.
I don't know this, but let me ask the question. You tell stories of your childhood, and especially like your college basketball career, high school basketball career. Do you use stories much with your kids?
I don't talk about my sports much. I'm much more interested. There were times that I did, and as things come out, like if they're going through some of my photos and they see my photo from Utah State University on the basketball team, oh, there you are, Grandpa. And so I'll talk about that, how I was recruited by the Bell Edwards and how Ron McBride tried to get me to come up to the University of Utah. So I talked to him about that.
So let me ask you this. So you got these wonderful strengths as a grandpa. I want you to admit to a kryptonite or two, something that, trash was one of them. Is there anything else that kind of jumps out at you?
Yeah. I would say that I have a tendency to be judgmental very quickly. Instead of letting it play out and letting it be what it is, I have a tendency to jump on it and make a judgment call immediately. I remember an incident where my son, Ryan, my oldest boy, took a washer, copper washer, parted it so that he could get it to where it would part and fit on the end of the ear. And so he put it in and it looked like he had an ear in his ear. And all of the family had gotten together. They said, "We're going to play this prank on Dad." And so all of them were together. When it came in, I said, "What's going on? What's the matter?" Because I knew something was up. And my wife says, "Go ahead and show your dad what you got. Go ahead and show him." And so Ryan took his hand away, and there was that copper or that brass ring in his ear. And I said, "That better not be what it is, because I will take a pair of pliers and yank that out right now." So Bentley just exploded with laughter as they took that copper ring apart and just showed me what it was. They got the biggest kick out of that. They put one over on Dad.
It's not easy for my kids and my grandkids to put one over on. Yeah, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer.
Well, I'm not sure I'm in quicker, but boy, they got me on that one for sure. They still remember that.
I'm reminded I'm a big Winston Churchill fan. In fact, I named Winnie after Winston Churchill. And there was a really great story about Churchill where somebody came up to him and they said, "Lord so-and-so is a very, very modest man." To which Churchill was reputed to have said, "Well, Lord so-and-so has much to be modest about." And I had been thinking about this modesty that we as grandparents or grandpas need to be maybe a little more modest. We need to be like, how can I up level? Maybe and like you were saying, a recognition of maybe there's some areas that you can improve in. I know that there's some, like, I'll tell you what my kryptonite is. It's 4-year-old whiny butt kids. And that sends me to
behind you on the phone.
Yeah. Sometimes they're my grandkids, and I love them to death. But
I have to tell you one Churchill story. You're one Churchill fan. He had a woman who was in the House of Commons, and she stood and she said, after a discussion that they had, "If I was your wife, I would put poison in your tea." And Winston Churchill said, "If I was your husband, I would drink it."
I think that you're a grandpa who uses humor. I think humor is a wonderful lubricant for relationships, and you tease. And I guess I need to be better at trying to find more times, I think, to be appropriately serious. Maybe, maybe I have to be sort of a funny guy, and maybe they're learning from me.
I think there are times. I've never respected or thought people were great if they were silly. If they were silly people. if they were silly grandpas. It's okay to have fun, it's okay to josh, and it's okay to tease and that. But there are those times when they are teaching moments, when you have to be able to take the time to involve them in what you're teaching, some concept, some precept that you're trying to get across to them that you think will serve them well in the future and be beneficial to them. So my kids will probably tell you that I'm too serious most of the time.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. They.
I know that not to be true, but you know, because when we're around, we manage to do a lot of laughing, and we talk about serious things.
I think sometimes they too often see the serious side of me, and too often hear the serious side of me. I think it would be very helpful to me and our relationship with my grandchildren to be more fun, to be a guy that they love going places with grandpa. They love going places and being seen with me and some of the fun things that we do. But they would never consider me to be a silly man. They just wouldn't.
And I don't think there's anything really wrong with that.
No.
So here's my last question for you.
Yeah.
And gather up all of the wisdom that you've had as being a dad and being a grandpa of a large breed. What advice would you have for husbands and fathers who are getting into that realm where they're having kids that'll get married and have kids? What advice would you give them? Grandfatherly advice would you give them, Jack?
I would say that the best advice that I can give them is to be honest, with themselves, to be honest with other people, to be the kind of person that can be trusted. I think that trust is one of the greatest attributes that people can have, is to be trusted. I think the other thing that goes along with that is to be generous with your praise, with thank yous. Too often now, I see with the youth a reluctance to say thank you, just simply thank you for that. Thank you for doing these things. Thank you for coming. I have some of my grandchildren that are very, very good at that. I have one son that took back all of the Christmas presents that we had given them and made the kids give us back everything that we had given them for Christmas because they did not say thank you. They acted like, oh, well, that's what Grandpa and Grandma gave us. That, and on to the next thing. They were so taken back by that they actually had their children turn back in their Christmas presents. And I thought that was a point that those kids never forgot. And those kids, of all of the kids, say thank you the most and express their thanks for your generosity. They never fail to recognize it. You bet. And I think that is an important personal trait, is to have the word thank you on your lips for everything that people are willing to contribute to you.
I know this is going to come shocking to everybody, but I didn't come out of the womb particularly grateful or thankful. And my cute mom made it one of her lifelong goals to teach me how to have an attitude of gratitude. Just a cool phrase.
That's great.
And my mom just, she gently helped me. And I consider myself a very grateful person. I can be better and I want to be better, but, I think that gratitude opens up everything as a goal.
In my experience with you, I have always known you to be very gracious.
Oh, thanks.
And express thanks. And I really have appreciated that. It's one of the things I think is your strong suit. I really do. That attitude of gratitude. I think you wear it well.
Well, thank you. Well, I wanted to throw back again the absolute eternal gratitude I have for you. With Winston, who was one of my thoroughbred kids. So if you pulled back on him, he'd rear up, and you dialed in, and you knew his number, and you called it.
Winston was one of the most trustworthy athletes that I ever coached. So I can go through his coaching at another school that he went to at Brighton, and how he missed not only the sport, but he missed the opportunity to excel. And he really is a thoroughbred. He is one of the great young men that I've been ever able to culture.
Well, you have such a wonderful, high and justifiably so high opinion of you, and I thank you for all of your efforts. This has been a wonderful discussion. It was as bad as you thought, right?
Well, it's about it all, but
No,
if they came thinking as long as we had a good time.
no, but it's been fun to have you here. I hope that I know that I've learned some very cool stuff from this that I'm going to be better at. But I love the idea of showing up and, the gratitude and, oh man, I just learned a lot of really neat things. This is why I love doing these interviews.
Thank you. I've learned a lot myself.
Oh, good.
I thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you very much. That was great. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Show. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here. I gotta go take a nap.